Let me tell you something. Being nice is a beautiful thing, but being wise is a whole different level. Some of you have spent your whole life being the nice girl, always saying yes, always putting yourself last, always bending over backward just to make sure everybody else is comfortable. But let me ask you, when was the last time somebody did the same for you? When was the last time someone checked in on you the way you check in on them? When was the last time you weren't just an option, but a priority? See, being nice is good, but being wise, that's what will set you free. People will take what you give, and if you keep giving without discernment, they will keep taking without gratitude. Some of you are running on empty because you've been too afraid to say enough. You've been conditioned to believe that if you just keep being nice, if you just keep sacrificing, if you just keep smiling and showing up, one day, people will finally see your worth. But let me tell you something. People don't value what they don't have to work for. If you keep handing out your time, your energy, your love like it's free samples at the grocery store, don't be surprised when people walk away without ever investing in you. There is a difference between kindness and weakness. A kind woman has a heart full of love, but she also has wisdom. She knows when to pour and when to pull back. She knows when to speak and when to walk away. She knows that love doesn't mean self-destruction. But a woman who hasn't learned wisdom will keep on giving until there's nothing left of her but exhaustion and resentment. And listen to me. God did not create you to be depleted. You have spent too much time trying to earn love by being convenient. You have allowed people to treat you as an afterthought because you thought that if you were just good enough, just patient enough, just understanding enough, they would finally see you. But let me tell you something. If they don't see you now, they won't see you later. If they don't value you now, they won't value you after you've given them everything you have. Some of you have been holding on to people who have already let you go. You keep showing up, keep checking in, keep making excuses for them because you're afraid that if you stop, you'll lose them completely. But I need you to hear me. You can't lose what isn't truly yours. And what is truly yours will never require you to sacrifice your dignity to keep it. There is power in stepping back. There is power in silence. There is power in realizing that not everyone deserves access to you. Some people only appreciate what they have once it's gone. Some people will never treat you right as long as they believe you'll always be there. But the moment you remove yourself, the moment you stop overextending, the moment you stop allowing yourself to be the one who always fixes, always forgives, always waits, watch how they react. Watch how they suddenly start noticing your absence. But this isn't about them. This is about you. It's about you understanding that your kindness should never come at the cost of your peace. It's about you realizing that being a good woman does not mean being a silent sufferer. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say, because at the end of the day, you teach people how to treat you. If you allow them to walk all over you, they will. If you continue to be available to people who are never available for you, they will never change. If you keep shrinking yourself just to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you, you will never know the full power of your own presence. And let me tell you something, when you finally decide to walk in wisdom, when you finally decide to stop trying to be everything for everyone, when you finally decide that you are worth more than last-minute calls, broken promises, and one-sided loyalty, that's when everything shifts. That's when the right people start showing up. That's when the doors you were knocking on start opening in places you never expected. That's when you realize that your worth was never something you had to prove. It was something you had to believe in yourself first. You've spent too much time waiting for people to tell you that you're enough. Too much time hoping that one day someone will look at you and finally see your worth. But let me tell you something. if you keep looking for validation from people who don't even value themselves, you will stay in a cycle of disappointment. You will always feel like you're not good enough because you've handed the measuring stick of your worth to people who don't even know how to use it. Some of you have been bending, twisting, reshaping yourselves just to fit into someone's idea of who you should be. You've silenced yourself, dimmed your light, made yourself smaller because you thought that if you were just a little easier to handle, a little less outspoken, a little more agreeable, then maybe, just maybe, they would finally love you the way you deserve. But let me ask you something. Why are you working so hard to be chosen by people who don't even appreciate the real you? See, the problem isn't that you aren't enough. The problem is that you keep looking for people to confirm what God already said about you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are valuable. You are worthy. And you don't need anyone's approval to walk in that truth. The right people will recognize it without you having to prove it. But the wrong people, no matter how much you give, no matter how much you change, no matter how much you pour into them, it will never be enough, because their inability to see your value has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. Some of you are exhausted because you've made your life about pleasing people who will never be satisfied. You're running yourself into the ground trying to make sure they are happy, trying to be everything they need, trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep the peace, even when it's costing you your own peace. But let me tell you something. If someone only values you when you are useful to them, that is not love. That is convenience. And the moment you stop bending over backward for them, the moment you stop making excuses for them, the moment you finally stand up for yourself, watch how they change. People who only love you when you're easy to control will hate you when you start valuing yourself. They will call you selfish when you stop sacrificing yourself for their benefit. They will call you difficult when you stop agreeing with things that don't sit right in your spirit. They will make you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself because they were never there for you. They were there for what you could do for them. And that's why you have to stop seeking validation from people who don't even deserve access to you. Some of you have been chasing people who wouldn't even look for you if you went missing. You've been proving yourself to people who wouldn't even defend you if your name was being dragged through the mud. You've been trying to earn love when real love is never something you have to beg for. When you start valuing yourself, everything changes. You stop begging for attention. You stop chasing after people who are running away from you. You stop breaking your own heart by holding on to people who have already let you go. And you start realizing that the love you were looking for was never in them. It was always supposed to start within you. You have to understand that the moment you stop looking for validation, the moment you stop making decisions based on what people will think, the moment you stop letting their opinions determine how you see yourself, that's the moment you step into your real power. Because the truth is, not everyone will clap for you, not everyone will appreciate you, not everyone will support you, and that's okay. You don't need the whole world to see your value. You just need to see it for yourself, because when you do, you won't settle for less. You won't keep knocking on doors that were never meant to open. You won't waste time trying to convince people to love you when the right people will love you without hesitation. So this is the moment where you make a decision. Are you going to keep shrinking yourself just to fit into spaces that were never meant for you? Are you going to keep exhausting yourself trying to earn love that should have been given freely? Or are you going to finally step into your worth and understand that you were never meant to be tolerated? You were meant to be cherished. Respect is not something you beg for. It's not something you chase after. Not something you have to prove you deserve. Respect is earned by how you carry yourself, how you walk, how you speak, how you decide what you will and will not tolerate. Some of you are exhausted because you've been trying to force people to see your value. You've been trying to convince them to treat you right, to be loyal to you, to appreciate you the way you appreciate them. But let me tell you something, if they don't see it now, they never will. Some of you are giving your best to people who don't even deserve your presence. You're bending over backward, lowering your standards, making excuses for their behavior, because you keep telling yourself, maybe if I just love them harder, they'll change. Maybe if I just keep being patient, keep being understanding, keep being the bigger person, eventually they'll realize what I bring to the table. But let me ask you something. How long are you going to keep waiting for people to treat you right? If someone respects you, you don't have to beg for consistency. If someone respects you, you don't have to keep explaining why your feelings matter. If someone respects you, you don't have to fight for basic decency. Respect is not something you force out of people. If it's not there, no amount of effort on your part is going to create it. And the moment you realize that, the moment you stop reacting every time they test you, every time they try to see how much you'll put up with, every time they take you for granted, that's the moment you take your power back. Because listen to me, people will only do to you what you allow. If you let them disrespect you once and say nothing, they will do it again. If you let them take advantage of your kindness and you keep showing up the same way, they will assume that's just who you are. If you keep tolerating broken promises, last-minute excuses, inconsistency, half-order, and you keep smiling through it, you are teaching them that this is okay. But the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop chasing, they will feel the shift. Some of you need to stop trying to make people understand your worth and start removing yourself from places where your worth is not recognized. They don't get it? Fine. They don't appreciate you? Fine. They think you'll always be there no matter how they treat you? Fine. But they are about to learn the hard way that access to you is a privilege, not a right. And listen, I know it's not easy. I know you've been holding on, hoping that one day they'll wake up and see what they had in you. But sometimes the only way for them to realize it is for you to walk away. Sometimes the only way for them to respect you is for them to feel your absence. You see, some people will never value you while you're in their presence because they think you will never leave. They think you will always be available, always be the one who reaches out, always be the one who fixes things. But the moment you go silent, the moment you pull back, the moment you stop making yourself so easy to access, watch how they panic. But this isn't about them, this is about you. It's about you understanding that your energy is precious, your time is precious, your love is precious, and you don't have to waste another second trying to convince people to treat you right when the right people won't need convincing. Because the truth is, when you carry yourself with respect, you will attract people who respect you. When you stop reacting to disrespect, you'll make it clear that you are not someone to be played with. When you stop explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds about how they want to treat you, you will realize that your energy is better spent on those who see. You keep giving and giving, pouring yourself out, stretching yourself thin, and bending in ways you were never meant to bend. You think if you just love harder, if you just stay patient, if you just keep showing up, one day they'll realize your worth. One day they'll appreciate all you've done. One day they'll stop taking you for granted. But that day never comes, does it? Because the truth is, some people will never value you, not because you're not valuable, but because they've gotten too comfortable consuming your love without ever having to earn it. Some of you have made yourself a lifeline to people who wouldn't even swim for you if you were drowning. You have been their safe place, their comfort, their emotional support, their problem solver. You have carried them through storms, wiped their tears, encouraged them when they were down. But when you need the same in return, silence. When you need someone to be there for you, suddenly they're too busy, too distracted, too caught up in their own world. And yet you keep showing up, keep trying, keep hoping. But let me tell you something. You cannot keep setting yourself on fire just to keep others warm. Love is not a one-way street. Love is not you constantly giving while the other person just takes. Love is not you overextending yourself for people who wouldn't even inconvenience themselves for you. Some of you are tired not because you're weak, but because you're carrying relationships that should have ended a long time ago. You are holding on to people who have already let go of you. You are staying in situations that are draining the very life out of you because you are afraid of what will happen if you finally walk away. But here's the truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot keep showing up for everyone else at the expense of yourself. You cannot keep ignoring the fact that you're tired, that you feel unappreciated, that you feel unseen, that deep down you're starting to resent the very people you've been bending over backward for. Because love should never feel like a burden. Love should never feel like a transaction. Love should never leave you feeling empty. Some of you have been conditioned to believe that loving people means endless sacrifice. That if you just endure, if you just tolerate, if you just keep proving yourself, one day they'll love you back the same way. But love is not supposed to break you. It is not supposed to exhaust you. It is not supposed to make you question your own worth. And if it does, that is not love. That is emotional labor disguised as love. That is you doing all the work while they sit back and enjoy the benefits. You need to understand that the right people will never put you in a position where you have to beg for love, respect, or effort. The right people will pour into you just as much as you pour into them. The right people will love you without you having to prove that you are worth loving. The moment you realize this, the moment you stop begging, stop pleading, stop explaining, everything shifts. Because the love you are looking for starts within you. When you finally get tired of being unappreciated, when you finally get tired of overextending yourself, when you finally decide that you are done being used, you will see something powerful happen. You will stop chasing people who don't value you. You will stop fighting for relationships that should have ended. You will stop feeling guilty for walking away from those who never truly honored your presence. And you will start making room for the love that was meant for you. The love that does not demand your exhaustion in order to exist. You spent your whole life trying to be what everybody else needed you to be. You learned early that if you were agreeable, if you didn't make waves, if you smiled even when you were hurting, people would like you. They would accept you. They would keep you around, so you made yourself small. You held your tongue when you wanted to speak. You put others first even when it left you with nothing. You became whatever they wanted, whatever they needed, just to feel worthy of their love. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you asked yourself who you really are? Some of you have been wearing a mask for so long you don't even know who's underneath. You've become so used to people pleasing, so used to putting your needs second, so used to shrinking yourself for the comfort of others that you've forgotten what it feels like to stand tall in your own truth. And now when you try to set boundaries, when you finally say no, when you start to choose yourself, you feel guilty. You feel like you're doing something wrong. But let me tell you something. You are not wrong for choosing yourself. You are not selfish for putting yourself first. You are not unkind for refusing to be walked over. Some of you have confused kindness with self-sacrifice. You think that if you're not always available, if you're not always giving, if you're not always accommodating, then you're not a good person. But hear me when I say this. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be loving and still refuse to tolerate disrespect. You can be supportive and still say, I will not allow myself to be used. Because real kindness is not about abandoning yourself to please others. Real kindness includes you too. It is not your job to be everything to everyone. It is not your responsibility to carry relationships, to fix broken people, to be the one who always bends. The moment you start honoring yourself, the moment you start showing up for yourself the way you've shown up for others, you will see who really respects you. Because listen to me, some people only liked you when you were easy to control. Some people only loved you when you had no boundaries. Some people only stuck around because you tolerated what no one else would. But the moment you start saying, I deserve better, the moment you start expecting more, the moment you stop being the woman who gives endlessly without receiving anything in return, watch who stays and who leaves. And when they leave, let them. When they call you selfish, let them. When they say you've changed, say, yes, I have. Because growth looks like selfishness to people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. They will try to guilt you, try to make you feel bad for finally choosing yourself, try to manipulate you into going back to who you used to be. But don't you dare shrink back. Don't you dare apologize for doing what you should have done a long time ago. You were never meant to be a doormat. You were never meant to be the woman who gives until she has nothing left. You were never meant to be the one who stays quiet just to keep the peace. You were meant to be bold. You were meant to take up space. You were meant to stand in your power, to know your worth, to set the standard for how you deserve to be treated. And the moment you do, the moment you start walking in that truth, you will see that the only people who have a problem with it are the ones who were never truly for you in the first place. You keep waiting for the world to give you permission, waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to stand up for yourself, to put yourself first, to stop settling for less than what you deserve. But let me tell you something, that permission will never come. Nobody is going to hand you your worth. Nobody is going to wake up one day and say, you've done enough, now it's your turn to be happy. No, because as long as you keep giving, as long as you keep tolerating, as long as you keep bending, there will always be people ready to take advantage of it. And they will never tell you to stop, because as long as you are serving their needs, they don't care if you are neglecting your own. Some of you have been living your life waiting for people to respect you, waiting for people to finally see your value, waiting for people to give back to you the way you have given to them. But life does not reward waiting. Life rewards those who take a stand. Life rewards those who decide that they are no longer going to be the woman who gives endlessly while receiving little in return. Life rewards those who stop waiting for someone else to choose them and start choosing themselves. It is time for you to understand something. You teach people how to treat you. Every time you tolerate disrespect, every time you ignore the red flags, every time you accept less than what you deserve, you are sending a message. You are telling people, this is okay. This is what I will accept. This is how little effort you can give me, and I will still stay. And if you don't respect yourself enough to walk away, why would they respect you enough to change? Some of you are afraid to lose people, so you keep quiet. You lower your standards. You stay in situations that are draining you because you think it's better than being alone. But hear me, loneliness is not being without people. Loneliness is being surrounded by people who make you feel unseen. Some of you are already lonely, but you are too afraid to admit it. You are in friendships where you do all the giving. You are in relationships where your needs are never a priority. You are in spaces where your voice does not matter. And yet, you stay. You stay because you think if you just hold on a little longer, things will change. You stay because you think if you just prove yourself a little more, they will see your worth. You stay because you think leaving means you failed. But let me tell you something. Leaving is not failure. Leaving is freedom. Walking away from people who do not value you is not giving up. It is waking up. It is finally seeing things for what they are, not for what you hope they would be. You are not weak for expecting more. You are not wrong for wanting to be treated with the same love and respect you give so freely to others. And if someone cannot give you that, if someone cannot meet you at the level you deserve, then it is not your job to lower yourself to accommodate them. It is your job to rise. It is your job to say, I refuse to settle. I refuse to be overlooked. I refuse to keep proving myself to people who were never meant to be in my life in the first place. There will always be people who don't understand your growth, people who will call you selfish, people who will accuse you of changing. And you know what? They're right. You have changed. You have changed because you got tired of being the woman who puts herself last. You have changed because you are no longer willing to accept breadcrumbs when you know you deserve the whole table. You have changed because you finally realize that loving yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. And when you start walking in that truth, when you start choosing yourself, when you stop apologizing for expecting more, something incredible happens. You become untouchable. You stop being afraid of losing people because you know that the right people, the ones who truly value you, will never require you to diminish yourself to be loved. And that right there, that moment of realization, is when you step into the woman you were always meant to be.